Welcome to a new episode of the show. Prasanna Ranganathan is our awesome guest today. Here's a little highlight reel or sneak peek, if you will, of some of the amazing accomplishments that Prasanna has created in his life. From being the head of diversity and belonging at Shopify and now running his own business in the space, to covering the red carpet at the 2019 Academy Awards, to working in human rights law for 13 years, to creating social media campaigns for Oprah Winfrey, DreamWorks, Sony Pictures, and this is just a taste of some of the magic that Prasanna has created. I am truly so inspired by Prasanna's ability to say yes to the next opportunity while also working at the highest level at whatever he chooses to do. And to make matters even more impressive, Prasanna is a legally blind LGBTQ2+ person of color who is consistently working to build a more inclusive world. This conversation is so deep, so fun, so uplifting, and please stick to the end because he tells the story of co-writing a book with his mom, Prema, a cookbook called Made with Prema, a celebration of Indian cuisine. And the story is just so amazing. So thank you so much for being here and listening today. Now, please enjoy the conversation with Prasanna. Hello, Prasanna. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Gwen. I'm so thrilled to be here.
I am so excited to interview you, to converse with you today, because I was sharing with you that when I think of you, I just think awesome. You are an awesome human being. You're a deep person. You're a fun person. You're somebody that I truly admire. And so I just think this could be such a fun conversation. So my first question for you today is, what is going awesome in your world?
What is going awesome in my world? I would say it's the daily intention of being present in my life in a way that I haven't been for a long time. It's about paying attention to the things that are around me, feeling very deeply grounded in my purpose. So I think for me, the things that are going awesome is I finally feel like I'm in a place in my life where I feel the most present in my sense of self, and I'm most excited to explore what that means for me going forward.
Oh, this is such a great place. This is such a great place to start. Okay, so I brought a prop with me.
My favorite book.
It's been a joy learning more about you and listening to other interviews about you. But what's so interesting is I never take past interviews as where you are today. I see I see everyone as a completely new person in the moment. So I just wanted to bring up the Untethered Soul because it is such a beautiful book. And I just wanted to ask you, how did this book come to you, and what lessons or wisdom comes to mind when you think about it?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so the book came to me as all fantastic things in my life have through Oprah Winfrey. So I saw her do an interview with the author Michael Singer on her show Super Soul Sunday. And I watched the interview, and right away I was like, I need to read this book. I need to read this book. It's speaking to me in a way that just an interview hasn't in a long time, and I knew I was curious to learn more. And I always describe it as the shortest book that took me the longest time to read. I felt like I had a highlighter and was highlighting every sentence. Every chapter felt like there was no word that was extra or unnecessary. It all felt like essential threads to a tapestry that was just going to fundamentally alter how I looked at the world and how I saw my own place in the world. And for me, the book did two things. One, its lessons enriched my life in a really tangible way, and its existence unlocked for me a whole new career path. Because with the Untethered Soul, myself and a group of ambassadors called the Own Ambassadors created this online network to support the Oprah Winfrey Network. One of our first activations was hosting a book club on Twitter for the Untethered Soul. So we all read it. We all came online on a Friday night at 8:00. And for an hour and a half, we went through a series of discussion questions about the book, how it impacted us. People would tweet in their responses. It ended up becoming a trending topic. And we later learned from Oprah that it had an impact on book sales as well. So it was like the first time I tangibly saw the way my love of conversation could actually lead to the creation of a career that was beyond my wildest expectations. But the book, in terms of its main lessons, I can think of many, but I will narrow it down to 3. The first is, you are not the inner roommate or the critic. You are the observer. You're the observer of the voice that's inside of you, whether it's your inner voice, your intuition, or your inner critic. So you are separate from that inner critic. The falsehoods that inner critic tells you, like, who are you to wear that pattern jacket to an interview with Gwen? Who are you to talk so expressively? All the things that tell you to think less of yourself is from the inner critic. And our job in life is realizing we are not the inner critic. We are the observer of the inner critic. We are the observer of our thoughts. We are the observer of our feelings. And by doing so, it allows us to see the truth of who we are in the fullness of who we are. The second thing I would say that really stuck with me is, the only choice you have in this life is, do I choose to be happy? Do I choose happiness? And for me, that's been a huge question. Regardless of what I'm facing, regardless of the ache that is on my heart, what are the tangible choices I'm making on a daily basis to choose happiness and to pursue happiness? And my name, Prasanna, means supreme happiness or bliss. So for me, it is, what are the choices I'm making to come back to myself? And the third lesson that's the most powerful for me, which is sometimes viewed as a bit morbid, but for me, it's really powerful. Death is the ultimate teacher. So when we talk about our life in retrospect, or when we celebrate someone's life who's passed on, we often realize very clearly what about our lives is important. When we talk about someone's life, we're not talking about how many sales they made in a year, what were their career achievements or highs. It was really, what was the impact of that person's presence in the world? How did they make people around them feel? And what was the thing that their presence taught people to do more of in their own lives? So by knowing that, what can we do in our lives to center those things now? So we're not learning about what we should have done in hindsight, but we're guiding ourselves forward based on knowing what is most important now. So those would be my 3 favorite lessons.
That is so beautiful. I 2 things are tugging on my heart after you saying that. Number 1, I know you're already an author, but do you have your own book, your own personal book of wisdom? Does that exist? Is that coming? What is that a thing?
Oh my gosh, it does not exist. I will say that I am a work in progress who's been influenced, informed, and lifted by the words of other people. So books have always been my thing, podcasts, interviews. For me, I feel like I'm in a constant state of learning. I feel like I am excited to one day write a book, but for me, I feel like it will almost be a series of comedic essays or like short stories, which talk about diversity and inclusion, which is my life's work, but also talk about my own sort of misadventures, let's just say, in the personal and professional realms. So I'm excited to do that one day, but have a few ideas noodling around, but haven't put pen to paper yet.
Okay. I'm going to put a pin in that because I have a question about that. But I think it would be very fun to ask the wisdom of this book, like life force energy. Give us a message. Yes. What is the message that Prasanna and I and anyone listening or watching, what do we need today? Like just a fun moment of like, what's the message of what do we got to do? What do we need? Okay. Well, it opened up to chapter 8 that simply said, let go now or fall. So let's see. People don't understand that fear is a thing. It's just another object in the universe that you are capable of experiencing. You can do one of 2 things with fear. You can recognize that you have it and work to release it, or you can keep it and try to hide from it. Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh my God.
As you said, what you said about how like each sentence is essentially a gem. As I was just looking at it too, I'm like, why is every page folded over? It's like the whole book can't be folded over, but it is. Okay, so good. Thank you so much for diving into that. And now this leads perfectly into my next question, which is, you are a true celebrator of life. You are a true, with your career, you are creative, and you do it all. As you said, diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging is your life's work. You are a published writer. You wrote a cookbook with your mom. You're a speaker. You're an accessibility advisor, correspondent, interviewer, social media strategist. Those are just a few highlights. And so I'd love to ask you, what are you cultivating? What are you calling in next? And what is your process for what you take on next?
That is really interesting. So when I was in high school, I very much thought that your career needed to speak to every aspect of your personality in a way where you felt energized, alive, and electric in every moment. And so for me, I was really passionate about a few things. One, I loved people. I loved interacting with people. The other thing was I loved words and speaking and communicating and writing. And I was in a constant state of tension between being a lawyer or being a psychiatrist. I kind of had seen those two paths as things I wanted to pursue. If I actually think back on it now, I probably should have pursued my heart's calling, which was to be an artist, like an actor or a writer. But for me, I just didn't even see that as a possibility. And so those were the two things that pulled on my heart and sort of drew me into my purpose. And what I quickly discerned after going to law school and practicing as a lawyer was, while that spoke to certain parts of my personality, it didn't speak to every aspect of my personality. And I think that's the challenge we face when we build lives where work is the nucleus of our life, as opposed to being an element of our life. And I think the biggest lesson I've learned over my 17-year career that's still going is, how can I build a life where all of the elements that make me who I am are not always given an equal opportunity to shine, but are at least given space to exist and be nurtured and grow. So for me, I always describe myself based on my career. So my first introduction was, hi, my name is Prasanna. This is what I do. I'm a lawyer, or I'm a DEIB expert, or these are the things I've done. I've now started thinking about, how do I introduce myself in a way that gives people insight into who I am without leveraging the title as the shortcut to that understanding. And so now I think what I've learned about myself throughout this journey is my pursuit of many things. I used to think, oh gosh, it's because I can't focus. Like, I always saw it as a negative thing. Why can't I just thrive in one area and what I quickly realized was, I am discovering different parts of myself by pursuing these different paths. And by doing that, I'm creating a life that's multifaceted and multi-layered. And I hope in turn, it teaches me new things about myself, but also teaches me new things about the ways I can use my skills in service to the world.
It is. So how do you know when so you do everything at such a high level? When you do something, it is at the top world-class level. It's astounding. Like, so what I'm curious about is, so say you're climbing that next mountain, the next thing is coming in. How do you not maybe like put too much pressure on yourself, or does perfectionism come in? How does that kind of land in your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we talked about that quote on fear earlier. You were talking about letting go of the fear. I think a lot, I think of this quote, is it Elizabeth Kubler-Ross maybe? And she said there are only two emotions, love and fear. All positive emotions come from love. All negative emotions come from fear. The emotions that come from love include abundance, generosity, compassion, and engagement. The emotions that emanate from fear include anger, disillusionment, hurt, heartache, harm. And for me, I think so many things that I kind of think about sometimes are fear-based. It's like, oh, I have to do this really well because I'll never get another chance to do it. Or I have to do this really well because there aren't many people who are queer or racialized or disabled who've been given this opportunity. I've often been the first person in the room with those multiple intersecting identities, either in the legal profession or the DEI space or in the storytelling space. And I'm like, oh, I hold the responsibility of not just my own experience in this space, but if I don't show up in a way that's perfect, I potentially will be a blocker for future people getting these opportunities as well. One, that is ego-based, because who am I to think that I have that much control over either other people's perceptions of me or that my performance is going to have an impact on others. But the second thing is it's also fear-based. When we talked about that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross thing, it's like, I'm so afraid of these things not working out, or me not doing the greatest job, or me losing opportunities in the future, or me preventing other people from having opportunities, that I'm so motivated towards excellence because of those remnants of fear. And so being critical of myself over the past few years, I thought, if there are only two emotions, love and fear, what would happen if I leaned into love? What would happen if, instead of the framing conversation of every experience being, I'm afraid of this happening, I'm afraid of this eventuality, which, as we talked about, is the inner roommate manifesting in emotional form. It's telling us, who are you to want these things, and you're not entitled to them, or you're going to mess it up. What if instead I leaned into love, which was the knowledge that this experience is here to teach me something? What a blessing it is that I've been in this space or place. What can I learn from this opportunity going forward? And if it's not exactly how I dreamed it to be, what is it helping me do, learn, become, so that as I move forward in the world, I'm enriched by the experience? And by leaning into love, it's caused me to be more present, which I have to say is one of my biggest shortcomings. I'm always thinking about what's next, or the next goal I need to work towards. And in the process of that, I'm making happiness a destination as opposed to an experience along the journey of life.
That is such an amazing reminder, because it's so interesting, even when I'm speaking with you, I'm like curious. I'm like, what's next? It's like, what's now?
Yeah.
Because I'm just so amazed at all the different things that you've done. And personally, I'm going through an interesting transition, and it's so nice when you have a thing and you can say, this is who I am and this is what I'm working on. And so how do you go about the liminal space, I guess you could say, when you're not, like, I guess you're saying you are reworking the bio and stuff. Yeah. How do you deal with, for anyone dealing with the, like, maybe chrysalis moment before the butterfly
Yes.
again?
Yeah. It is very challenging. And I will say, as much as I'm trying to figure out the way to introduce myself where I share dimensions of my identity or personality that maybe aren't easily discernible, it's not a natural instinct for me still. I still want to introduce myself based on my title or my credentials or my education or my work, for two reasons. One, sometimes gives me unearned credibility when I walk into a conversation. So if I tell you that I'm a lawyer, if I tell you that I've worked in this company, you might say, oh, like, you have some experience or knowledge that might be interesting or impactful in this conversation. I'm really trying to get away from that, because I've very quickly learned over the course of my career that someone's title or experience doesn't necessarily denote A, intelligence, but B, it doesn't also denote an ability to share insights. It might just be a person who's done a certain thing that's brought them to this point in life. It doesn't necessarily give them that opportunity. I will say I have leaned into it in the past, where I've walked into a room or space, and because I'm the first or only from a disabled community or racialized community, that I definitely feel judged or othered or excluded. And so I've leaned into that to tell people, hey, take me seriously. Instead of deconstructing the systems that have kept me out, I've sort of tried to be like, what is the shortcut for me to get that credibility now so that I can do this work? But I think for me, the biggest thing that I've learned is, I'm I often say this, who I am is what I bring. So just as I bring my education, my experience to every conversation, I also bring my dimensions of diversity. I also bring my passion for certain topics or issues. I bring all of those elements of myself into a space. And maybe I don't need to introduce myself with what I do or a title. Maybe I introduce myself by just existing in that space. And that's uncomfortable because I like to define things. But maybe, like you said, that chrysalis moment before we become a butterfly is less about telling the world what we do and more telling ourselves what we're capable of and where we are in this moment. And just reminding ourselves that we're not defined by an outcome or an objective, but we exist and persist in every place and space we're in, because by the very nature of being human, that is our very purpose.
This is so profound, actually, because you also remind me that when we lead with our titles, you're kind of like pushing, like, this is who I am, see how good I am. But the way you're speaking about just existing in your power, you're going to be a magnet. People are just going to be drawn to you because it's like, who is this person? What is happening with this person? So if any dream opportunity could come to you now, could land in your inbox today, what would feel awesome to have land in the inbox or phone call or something like that?
So great. So I would say my dream opportunity would be to be the head of DEI at a storytelling organization. So whether that's a film studio or a television like network, I actually think that stories have the opportunity to not just reflect the world in which we live, but imagine the world we seek to build. And I think so often stories are relegated to something that, oh, it's frivolous or it's a nice to have. But in DEI work, what I've actually found is that when people bear witness to the stories and lived experiences of others, they're not only transformed as individuals, they're given the blueprint by which they can change their actions as leaders, as change makers in whatever place they're in. So I actually think stories have a profound and like timeless and expansive power to drive change. So for me, if the dream inbox opportunity were to come, it would be like, dear Prasanna, we're thrilled to offer you the job of like head of DEI at, I don't know, like Netflix or like Apple TV Plus, or I mean, I know that those roles all exist and those roles are all filled, but yeah, a dream opportunity would be to bring my creative spirit together with my DEI and lawyer experience, and then be able to bring all facets of my being into work that sort of lit that spark within me.
This is so good. As you were speaking, I just got complete chills. I'm like, oh my God, it's there. It's there. It's there. Whoever hires you in that role is so lucky because you truly embody the work. You are the case study for the work. You are the person for the job. So it's just amazing. So I can't wait to see, the next chapter unfold, but we love the chrysalis moment too.
Love it. We love it. And you know what? It's funny because as a child raised on 1990s rom-coms, I have to say that I'm very into the musical montage. Like that's like the thing I want, right? Where everything moves very quickly. Like Elwood studies for the LSAT while like there's a musical montage, and then she ends up getting a 179 or a 180 or whatever she ended up getting. There's a musical montage of her studying in law school and then getting the internship. I've always wanted the musical montage, but I've wanted the musical montage post-editing with the song edited. I've not necessarily wanted to live the elements that form the musical montage in real time. So it's a reminder for me to like remember, like while I'm living my life, it's crafting the story that I'll in the future tell about my experience. And so in the rush to get towards my dreams, don't forget that this is a vital part of the musical montage. I just need to pick the track that goes with it.
So good. And can I also say, when you were talking about that dream opportunity, tell me why I thought of Reese Witherspoon. Do we need to call God. Reese? Hello, sunshine.
No. Hello, sunshine. I know.
Okay.
It's true. It's true. I mean, it's funny. Other friends have said, like, you're working with clients right now in the storytelling space. That's like a part of my work. I work with an animation studio. I've done some work with some film festivals and film companies. And so they're like, you're doing the work you want to do. You don't necessarily need the title to live your life's passion. So it's a reminder, right? It's like, this is ultimately where I see the future, but it doesn't necessarily prevent me in this moment from doing the work that I'm most passionate about. So don't, as we were talking about earlier, the title might be something that we aspire for because that's where we see the web or the constellation of our dreams kind of hanging, but we also might be able to create those opportunities within our own lives on a day-to-day basis too.
Life truly brought us together to
did.
look in a mirror today, because I truly feel like the happiest I've ever been in my life, but there's no like fancy title. It's like working on different projects with people, but it's not like, and it's so fascinating. It's like a lesson of, hey, you don't need, it's a real ego melting moment. And it's awesome
I
and
think
terrible.
It is awesome and terrible. I think the last few years have also fundamentally altered perceptions of success. I often think about, even pre-COVID, research had shown that new graduates were, while interviewing at companies, passionate about two things in particular: flexible work arrangements and an organization's commitment to diversity and inclusion. So those were actually two things that like candidates were asking deep questions about in the interview process.
Mm.
And as the world has changed over the past years, people are like, I no longer dream of working. I dream of a life where work is a part of it, but I don't need to like find my life's purpose in the confines of a 9 to 5. I can find my life's purpose by being an entrepreneur, pursuing like multiple things at once. You and I have also been in the entrepreneurship bubble in many different ways over the past few years, and we know that that life is also not easy. But I think the ideal of we're going to work towards this one goal has shattered in a lot of ways, and people are now like, oh, the one goal may not resonate with you, but it deeply speaks to my experience. And I think there's something really beautiful about people finally saying like, I have something very specific I'm reaching for because that speaks to the deepest parts of who I am. It may not resonate with you. It may not be what's on everyone's vision board, but it is in line with what I know will make me happy. And I think there's something really powerful about that shift that we're starting to see more and more.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And you make me think of somebody we both are very blessed to know. So Sheri Salata, who worked in the Oprah world for 20 years and is running her own business. She had said that for many years, she was very work focused and misery was more of the compass. Like once I'm so miserable because I've worked so hard, then I'll leave. But now it's like happiness is the compass. And it's amazing to see what's unfolded in her life with her membership community, her course, with happiness as the compass. And so it's just, that's kind of what I've been taking is like, how can happiness be the compass? And then ideally what will unfold is just complete freedom and good things. And so, yeah, it's just
I love
interesting.
that. I love that. We were talking about the untethered soul at the beginning. One of my favorite lessons was like, the only choice you have in this life is whether or not you choose to be happy. And so if that is like the core choice that we have to make, you're right. Then in the past, I think so many things were like, you know what, I have to do this so that I can get to something better. It's like we lived in a constant state of, I will tolerate this because working really hard right now will get me to an opportunity in the future. And listen, I'm still someone who's always going to want to work hard no matter where I am. But it's also realizing like, I don't need to tolerate my life now in the hopes of getting to a life that I'll celebrate. Instead, I want to think about,
Whoa,
yeah.
whoa, hold on. Can you don't wait, can you say that again?
Yeah, I don't want to live a life that I tolerate now in the hopes that I'll get to a life that I'll celebrate in the future.
Standing ovation. Mic drop. Jam
Drop.
Gamble would be so proud.
Oh, talk about someone who's living in their purpose.
That is the most profound thing I've like ever heard. Wow. I don't know. That just, you are the wise one. You are the wise one. Oh my God.
Listen, I feel like we learn together in community. And for me, a lot of it has been, I will be very clear about these lessons in this conversation with you. And then 2 hours from now, I'll be in a meeting and I'll just be like, why isn't anything working out? Why does everyone else seem to have it figured out? Why does that person have such an incredible job? I want that. Why can't I have that? So listen, in this conversation, in this moment with you, I'm having clarity because you've created a space where I can have that clarity. But this is present Prasanna. Prasanna 2 hours from now could be a fundamentally different character. Like sometimes I think about myself during the course of a day and I'm like, wow, if people could see the range, maybe I really could be an actor. Like maybe that is like, it's just like all the emotional experiences that happen in one day. It's like, oh, maybe I do have the range to be an artist. It's just living my own life.
This is something I really want to mention. Well, first of all, yes, you absolutely have the range. If you want to be an Oscar-winning actor, let's let it be. Let it be so. Maybe Reese Witherspoon will produce it. Maybe that's why she's coming in. But one thing I noticed is anytime anyone ever talked to you on podcasts, they mentioned how much of a light you are, a bright spark. And obviously, yes, without question. But I just think it's important and so appreciated right now that you mentioned, I have a range. Hey, I'm going to have a jealousy flare up, or I'm going to be down in the dumps. And so, because I feel like there's so much like, you have to be a light and an example. And it's like, I just want to lie down.
No, I agree. It's exhausting. I often talk about, I mean, life is in duality. We talked about love and fear. We also need to talk about, I think, joy and hurt too, right? Like the idea of like, you only truly understand joy and you truly understand happiness if you've also understood at some point in your life the contrasting feeling. So like, you know what true joy and happiness feels like because in the past, you've experienced pain and sadness and loss and longing. Like those things exist in contrast. You can lean into the positive emotions, but it never means you can escape the negative experiences. And I will say that joy exists because we've lived lives where we've also had periods where there has been no joy at all or very minimal joy. We're able to understand and appreciate joy because we know what it means when it's not around us. So I think there's something powerful about obviously always wanting to live in alignment so we can experience joy, but also being really realistic about the fact that we only can truly experience it if we've known its absence.
Oprah needs to bring back the Super Soul 100. Oprah, hello.
Hello, Miss Winfrey. Hello.
Hi.
Yes.
You've already met her.
Remember me. You may remember me from such places as yes, I have. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. So when we talked about the book club earlier, like that was kind of the start of that whole relationship. Like I'd randomly been in the studio audience a number of years ago, and she used to take like questions from the audience, and I asked her what it would be like to be at the Oscars and that my dream was to be an Oscar seat filler. Like we had that whole conversation, but then I didn't ever think like she'd remember me again. And then when she started the network, we started a group that was like trying to do like Twitter parties and like social media activations to get more engagement around viewership. And because of that, she invited us to a luncheon to say thank you. Like she had us at a few events at the studio. So yeah, that is, as we talk about manifesting things, I don't even think I could articulate that that was a dream. Like I watched the Oprah show with my mom every day after school. That was like the one thing we did together. As I told her about my day, we watched the Oprah show. And so for me to be like someone who was such a key part of my daily life growing up, like I now have met them as an adult, I like could not have even imagined that. So when we talk about dreams, it's like, yeah, sure, we have dreams, but also let's be open to the fact that life has a magical and powerful way of surprising us when we least expect it.
Yes. I just have to know, when you met her, did you like shake her hand? Did you,
Yes,
you
what happened?
wait?
Actually, it was a hug. It was a hug.
Yeah.
So I was very surprised. I mean, this was like definitely pre-COVID era. So I was like, yeah, she was very warm. She said, yeah, the first time I met her was in the studio when we did that Q&A. So that one was just from a distance. Like she was on stage and I asked a question from the audience. And then the first time I met her for a conversation, yeah, it's funny because I think a thing we hear about successful people is they're exactly who they are in all aspects of their life. And that was very much the case. There were no cameras on, but she was warm and effusive, excited to meet you. I think the biggest lesson I've taken from her is when you're in conversation with someone, you want them walking away saying yes to the following 3 questions. Did you see me? Did you hear me? Did what I say matter to you? She said that was her philosophy for all like 4,561 episodes of the Oprah show. She wanted every person she interviewed walking away from that interview answering yes to those 3 questions. And so for me, the biggest thing that I've received in that is whether I'm doing a podcast interview, whether I am in conversation with a colleague, whether I'm supporting an employee through a crisis at work, whether I'm helping someone, a friend, my goal is to be ultimately totally present and hope that when they walk away, they say, yes, they saw me, they heard me, what I said mattered to them. So that's my goal. And I'm really grateful to Oprah for that.
That's so beautiful. Oh, that's so good. I have a couple more questions and some
Please.
rapid fire, but not like super rapid, just fun, medium pace rapid.
Okay.
Oh my God. Okay. So you mentioned your mom, and
Yes.
I would love for you to tell us about the creation of the book that you made with your mom, Made with Prema, a celebration of vegetarian cooking. I am so fascinated and curious. Tell us about making a book with your mom. Just how was that creative process? How did you do it?
So it is probably the thing I am the most proud of in my life. And I'm so grateful. So my mom taught cooking classes for the last 50 years. She had a catering business. She did charitable fundraisers, and like for her, food was always the love letter she wrote to anyone that came to the table. And it was a love letter. I always describe it as like it was a love letter she wrote to her mother who taught her how to cook. It was a love letter she wrote to her ancestors who shared recipes. It was a love letter she wrote to the other immigrant women in Saskatchewan that formed community with her when she was so far away from family. And so her dream was always to share her recipes in writing. And I think for her, it was a way to tell her story through food, also let the world know that she was here, but also hope that like she could share a part of our community and culture through others. So every time someone brought to life a recipe in their kitchen, they were almost, I don't know, just bringing a part of our family into their homes. She really loved that. So at the beginning of the pandemic, she started the writing process. My mom and I are both, I'm blind and my mom's legally blind. And she is not able to like use the computer to type. So what she did was she recorded a lot of voice notes that her friend in Saskatoon transcribed for her. She talked to her friend in Saskatoon on the landline, and her friend would type up the recipes. And so when she reached out to me, she's like, I have a few recipes. Like, do you think you can help me like put it into a book and we could maybe print a few copies? I was like, sure. She sent me a document. It was 308 recipes. And I said, Mom, this is like actually a book. Like this is a whole book. It is not just like a few recipes. So I spent the summer, she had worked on it for 6 months. She sent it to me. I spent about 4 months doing the chapters, writing the intro, getting the testimonials, putting it together. And then I thought we would self-publish. And so someone was like, I think you should just write to a few publishers and see if there's interest. We'd done research and we knew that cooking cookbooks were typically celebrity chefs now, or people with large Instagram followings, because like that translated to sales. And my mom has no online presence. So I sent out a few proposals, and then I sent a proposal to Rupi Kaur, who is this incredible poet, 4 best-selling books, a world tour. She's just phenomenal. She's based in Toronto, and her manager are friends. And so I sent them the proposal, and I was just like, can you give me some feedback? Like, what are things we should do? And they called me back a week later and they said, we're actually starting an imprint that's focused on amplifying the voices of South Asian women like your mom. And we would like the book to be our first publication. And like, I wasn't even asking them to publish. I was just like, can you give me advice on the proposal? And so when we talk about those alignment moments where we couldn't have even seen something happening, that happened. And so when I told my mom cried on the phone, and she was so excited her book was being published, but she said to me, she's like, I never thought anyone would care about what I had to say. And it both broke my heart, but it also just reminded me that so many times people are walking through this world with so much expertise and knowledge and like gifts and abundance to share with other people, and they're ignored or they're diminished or they're devalued. So what are the things we can do on a daily basis to notice people, to amplify their voices, to give people opportunities? We all have the power to do that. And I think when my mom said that to me, I'm like, okay, what am I going to do in my life going forward that creates pathways for people who didn't see themselves in certain spaces?
That is the most beautiful, heartbreaking, heartwarming, uplifting story.
Yeah.
And that is so cool that you emailed Rupi. And I was actually your bubble. Like I was also researching Rocky Muta.
Rocky's amazing. Rocky and Rupi are the ones that created the imprint, published the book. They are so amazing. We actually just met this week to celebrate because we completely sold out the entire print run of the cookbook. My mom did not imagine, I didn't imagine a lot of things that have happened to us over the last year, but like Mindy Kaling shared the book with her community. Lily Singh featured us in her book club. Like it's all been blessings that have been unlocked just by, I can't describe it as any other way than things, the stars aligned, or there was like a spiritual dimension to it, or it's just something that was beyond us. And I'm just really, really grateful for that, because I don't think any of us imagined this being such an incredible experience. And it's been beyond our wildest expectations.
Wow. Wow. What's so, I need like a minute for this, like to process, because I can, just the fact that it came, like, yeah, your mom didn't have a huge social media presence. She didn't even, I think I saw, she didn't even write down a recipe or transcribing them. You just emailed. Wow.
I did a bit of like preliminary research. I knew that there was a market for this. I think the thing that was also really powerful was when my mom told me about the book, and I said, okay, this is what we're doing. She's like, well, I don't want to make money off of it. I was like, okay, like, what are your thoughts? She's like, well, I want 100% of our profits to go to the CNIB. So It's also ended up becoming a fundraiser for an organization that like transformed my life. I became legally blind in 2005, and it happened pretty abruptly just as I started my career as a lawyer, which is a career that requires a lot of reading and a lot of like use of your eyes. And I think there's ways around it, but I just hadn't known. So I was at a point in my life where I was so afraid that the thing I had studied for was going to be hard for me to navigate going forward. And the CNIB gave me resources and tools and supports that not only helped me navigate the tangible elements of vision loss, but also gave me the confidence to realize that I could build a life where my dreams were as alive and as bold as they ever were. Like there were ways for me to thrive and not just survive. And my mom, knowing how much the CNIB has done for me, was really adamant that like the book was going to be a fundraiser for them. So we're excited to make that donation this year as well.
So cool. Oh my God. It's so exciting. Just being in your presence, hearing how life is unfolding for you is like, oh, this is so good. And it's like, yeah, being blind and going through different challenges and not living in a world that was built for you necessarily from, it's like technically, yes, you're in the world and you're here to make it a more inclusive place where you feel like you can belong. But it's just like amazing what you have been able to create. I'm just, I need to go weep in a corner.
I feel the same way about you. I mean, I know you have other questions, but I want to say this about you too to your listeners. I think, so I had the privilege of working with you when we were both in tech together. And one of the things I think I've always loved about you is you very quickly were able to identify when people had expertise or knowledge or wisdom to offer to the world. And not only did you amplify so many of us and our journeys so that we could get to the people that needed what we had to share, but you also gave us tangible tools to be like, here's how you can build a course or an offering in a way that allows you to bring your expertise together with the community that needs that expertise, and in a way where you don't have to, because I know this to be true as someone who works in DEI, the amount of requests I get to do free engagements, like come and talk to us about this. We have no budget, but we know you're so passionate about making our world more equitable. And you saw that gap and you were like, there is no reason why people should have this level of expertise and not be compensated for the work that they're doing. And so the work you've done around course design, working with creators who have never seen themselves as educators, but giving them the blueprint to share their expertise in a way that allows us to give our knowledge, but also in a way that allows us to build our business, is like such a profound offering. And I hope that when you look back on your career, you see not only what you achieved as an individual, but the systems and structures you gave to people who have fundamentally transformed their life because of your belief in us. So I just want to offer that to you as well.
That is the most beautiful, generous offering. Thank you so much for saying that. I'm taking it in and it comes at the perfect time. Thank you. Wow. This interview is melting my whole brain soul. The ego is both growing and breaking, growing and breaking.
You know.
Okay. I would love to talk to you for 4 more hours. But you know what? When you get that next thing that sparks another awesome moment, please reach back out if you want to unpack it again, because that would be so cool to hear that. Okay. So I want to ask you a few final questions and then just your final words of advice and where people can find you. So let me ask you, what is an awesome vacation spot that you've been to?
Okay, I will say I have 2 of them. The first is Zanzibar. I absolutely loved it. I was there, I lived in Ethiopia in 2008, 2009 for work. And while I was there, one of the vacations we did was to go to Zanzibar, the most beautiful beaches in the world. I've never felt more relaxed after a vacation. That was like one of my favorites. There's Stone Town, there's all the beaches, you can go visit like the various farms where they grow different spices. It was such a beautiful experience. And then my other most favorite place in the world is Bali. And as someone who loves yoga and spirituality, one of my favorite things to do when I go anywhere is visit sacred sites or spiritual sites, whether it's temples or churches or any sort of faith or denomination. I just love learning about how people connect to a higher power, how people connect to others in community. And Bali offered that to me by visiting like different sacred spaces and having that connection with sort of nature and spirituality as well. So those are my 2 favorite places.
So beautiful. What is an awesome self-care tip or tip to help you feel your best every day that you implement?
Okay, an awesome self-care tip for me is sleep. If I can get sleep that is uninterrupted, I would say like that for me, I feel more like myself the next day. So one of the things I try to do, although sometimes I fail at it, is I try to be device free for at least an hour before bed. And that I read something on paper or something like that. Like that generally tends to help me fall asleep. So yes, exactly. And then my gratitude journal, I'll usually write in it before bed. And so that's another thing where like pen and paper before bed. And then I'm thinking about the things I'm grateful for as I fall asleep. So
that's the way. What is an awesome food that you love?
Oh, okay. So my awesome food is rasam, which is like a South Indian. It can be based in dal or lentils, or it could be based like in a tomato-based thing. But you just mix it with rice, or you can drink it like a soup. And there's lots of different flavors. There's a whole chapter on it in our book. But it's great when you have a cold. It's the ultimate comfort food. But it's also the thing I could eat every day for the rest of my life and never be bored.
Speaking of your book, I can't wait for the next print run. I'm on the wait list. We're going to obviously drop some links, y'all. We need to get into the world, the Made with Prema world. We need to have more vegetarian cooking. Yes. Okay, 2 more. What is one piece of advice that you like to give to people?
Okay, so I think my one piece of advice is for people is don't allow other people's limitations for themselves inform the decisions you make about your life. So I think so many times people feel scared about who am I to dream about this bold dream? It's because someone has either shown them like, we need to be practical, we need to do all these things, or that doesn't happen for us. And like, it gives you the language to justify not pursuing your dreams. And so for me, it is break away from the patterns that tell you you are not enough, break away from the patterns that tell you your dreams aren't yours to have, and imagine a life that's bigger, bolder, and more beautiful than anything you thought was possible. And then pair that with the daily action of taking the next right step toward the direction of the dream. So let the dream inspire you, let it motivate you, but never let your dream overwhelm you. And to not allow it to overwhelm you, think about the daily actions you take in the direction of your dreams. You're not going to achieve it all in one day, but there are actions you can take on a daily basis that get you closer to that goal.
You speak in poetry, I feel like. It's just, yes. I mean, I know you're a professional speaker, but dang, you're good. So good.
Thank you.
Oh. And where can listeners or viewers, what's the best way to get into your world, to learn more about you, to follow you?
Oh, that's so kind. So all of my links you can find on my website, which is prasannaranganathan.com. So PrasannaRanganathan.com. And my Instagram is at Prasran, Prasran. And then, yeah, every other link is on there. I mean, I don't even know what other platforms I use anymore. I think those are kind of the main two, and LinkedIn, but I don't know, LinkedIn is like very career focused. Although I was hearing a thing that apparently LinkedIn is the choice for Gen Z, which I did not know. So I know, I find it so intriguing. I feel like I'm definitely missing that element of LinkedIn because mine feels very stoic and static at times.
Oh,
So
same.
I
We
need to
need
learn about
totally, but that's so good. I'll drop some links. And is there anything else that I didn't ask you that you'd want to share with people?
No, I think this is so beautiful. You asked me to come to a conversation that would be both fun and illuminating. And I think what I've loved so much about this is you've created space to organically move us in the direction that the conversation was taking us. And it felt like I was talking to a longtime friend. And I do consider you a friend. And I'm really, really glad that we worked at that place in tech that connected us, because what a blessing that is. Honestly, the best part of that job was the wonderful people I met. And I'm really, really glad that we've been able to stay in touch.
Thank you so much, Prasanna. It's just been a joy and honor. So fun to talk to you. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining us for the conversation today. Check out the links below to learn more. And if you enjoyed this episode, it would be so awesome if you could take a moment to rate it and leave a review. Thank you again for being here, and have an awesome day.